Hello and welcome to Jamie's Wee Podcast. In this episode, I'm excited to be joined by movement expert Braedy, who currently plies his trade here in Bali. We will be delving into exactly what it is a movement coach is and discuss the health benefits it has, including how it can have a positive impact on your mental health. Hiya Braedy, thank you for joining me in the podcast. This is actually, I'm just going to level with people, this is actually take two, because take one, I think I forgot to press record on the audio, so hopefully we can nail it as good as we did the first time. So thank you for being on the podcast. I appreciate it, man.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, and thanks for suckering me up with a couple easy questions. I've got them under the table now. That's easy.
Now, this is the first time we've actually met, and it's to discuss a subject I'm not too familiar about, so this will be an experience for both of us, I'm sure. And to give everyone some context on how we made this podcast happen, it was when I was filming at the Genesis Studios. You've also filmed at the Genesis Studios here in Bali, and I think you've seen, it was an Instagram story that they put up, you've seen that I was recording a podcast, and you were very kind enough to offer your services as a guest, which I really appreciate, so thank you for that.
Yeah, Genesis is great. I do all my podcasts there as well.
Is that where you do them?
Yeah.
Aye. It's a good place, man. Which studio did you actually use when you were there?
So I use the recording studio.
Right.
Yeah. And usually I'll just set it up like kind of inside on the ground.
It's a good setup. I actually filmed the promo video there as well. So
right, behind the desk, right?
I
saw the desk set up when you were there. Yeah,
that was me. I was sat behind the desk, and I filmed like the first 3 or 4 episodes there before I had to go back to Perth and take this thing on the road. So that's why I've got this kind of
it's a good setup.
Traveling podcast setup.
I like it. Yeah.
Is this a bit of you? Do you see yourself with a traveling podcast?
Yeah, 100%. I'm gonna grab this. That's the only reason I came on. I just wanted to see what stuff
you
have.
Steal my stuff. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. And also thank you for inviting me up to your home here. Again, as I say, I've got a traveling podcast set up, so the visuals are very important because this podcast does live on YouTube as well. So it's got to look the part, and it's very difficult sometimes to find a well-lit space because I'm using the GoPros. They're not the best cameras, so you need some good lighting. So I appreciate you inviting me here, man. It's a really cool spot.
Yeah, it's a cool little villa, just a modest little place, you know, a couple small rooms and a pool. It's kind of all you need in Bali, right?
Living the minimalistic Bali lifestyle.
That's it, yeah.
It's cool, man. It's cool. And how long have you actually lived here?
I've only been in this villa for about a month now,
okay.
But I've been in Bali for about 4 months now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's such a sweet lifestyle here. I mean, you don't need much of the villa. You eat out almost all your meals. Everything's so cheap, and I mean, the weather's so good. You spend most of the time outside anyway. So yeah, it's all you need is the pool, right? Something to jump in, and then like a nice little room like this.
Absolutely, and
it's AC.
You realize when you come to Bali, you realize how much you don't need. You know, when you can live this kind of minimalistic lifestyle. And I was going to say, who do you live here yourself, or?
Yeah, I've got a housemate. So it's like a 3-room villa, but I've got like one housemate, Sarah Silverstein. She's an awesome breath worker and an absolute legend. And yeah, we get along great. We share this room actually as like a treatment room. So I'll take people through my session. She'll take people through her session. She does like breath work and like aura photography. And then I do like movement, breath work, and like energy work as well.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah.
The aura photography is something that I know my other half, Ivana, I think she's quite interested in that because it shows obviously shows your aura behind you and stuff, so that'd be quite cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wicked. I actually haven't got it done yet. I have to. Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. So like it'll take a snapshot of you, and then it'll show like the color that you're emitting.
Yeah.
I actually don't know the science behind it, but it seems pretty sweet. And the cameras are like crazy expensive. Like I think she paid like, I probably shouldn't even say how much she paid for it, but a stupid amount of money. Yeah. Like a ridiculous amount for a camera.
Well, I'm sure she makes it back because it's a very unique skill.
She said she's already paid for it.
Really?
And she bought it, I think, at the beginning of this year. So yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think they only make like 200 of these cameras per year, so they kind of like make it a hot commodity sort of thing. Yeah.
So the aura business is booming then.
The aura business is booming, yeah.
I need to pick myself an aura camera. That's where I've been going wrong all this time.
Yeah, get some aura GoPros.
That'd be cool.
Good, yeah.
Could do like an aura podcast, you know,
Yeah.
just film our auras as we speak.
That would go off, yeah.
Last night I was listening to some of your stuff online, and it was actually an episode with, we've spoken about him before, Mr. Edward Dangerfield. He's a friend of yours, I believe.
Yeah, Edward's a real dear friend, and he used to be my old housemate actually, so we lived together and got along really well, and he's an incredible breath worker who really dives into the science of the breath, but also kind of spirituality. Yeah. He studies neuroendocrinology and like how the breath affects your hormones and the kind of biology side of it, but the link between the science and the spirituality is so beautiful, and he holds that in such a beautiful way. So anyone who hasn't either heard of breathwork yet or is just interested, like, look up Edward Dangerfield. I cannot recommend him enough. He's a magician.
I've only ever met him the once, and it was at this talk at Zen Cafe, and it was just like a speakers event. I can't remember what the subject of the talk was, but they went round the room and everyone told us what they'd done, and everyone did the usual thing, travel blog and all that kind of stuff, and I got to him and he was like, he captured the audience, as soon as he started talking about breathwork, everyone was taken in by his character first and foremost, and what he had to say about breathwork. So it was fascinating. So if Edward's listening, get yourself on the podcast, Edward. We'll get you on talking about breathwork as well.
For sure, yeah. I've had him on my podcast before, and like he will just talk your ear off about just brilliant subjects. So his whole thing is like the way that we breathe is the way that we think. And so like breathing into certain parts of your body is going to start to activate certain glands, and that's going to start to result in like your personality being a certain way, right? So if you're breathing really deep into like your root, then you're actually a lot more grounded. So coming back to kind of like the auras, you'd have like probably like an earthy red aura to you if you're really grounded.
Wow. Yeah. Must have some great conversations around the dinner table here.
Yeah, we have a good little tribe here in Canggu, and just a beautiful, mindful, brilliant community.
That's cool, man. That's really cool. It was the interview that you had with Edward that I listened to last night, and it was actually when I was listening to your voice, I was trying to pick up your accent. Where are you from? It's hard to place, so where are you from?
Yeah, I like to keep it that way. Kind of hard to place. I'm originally from Canada, but I've been traveling for the past few years, and spent a lot of time in New Zealand and Australia, Bali, and a little bit of time in Hawaii as well. Okay. Kind of over the past 3 years. And then before that, I was living in Western Canada in a ski town called Banff. And,
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's legendary. It's beautiful, but half the town is Australian, so it's almost like a little Australia. Right. So I think you pick up a couple little twangs from here and there.
It's like my mother half. She's a Kiwi. She's a Kiwi, and she spent we met in London, right? So she spent 4 or 5 years in London, and then obviously being with me with the Scottish accent. Our parents live in Perth, Australia, so she's got like this really neutral, non-Kiwi accent, and she hates it because I say, "You're not Kiwi, you don't sound like a Kiwi," but she hates it because she's like, I'm a Kiwi. Yeah, but right. She's just picked up because you'll hear some like Scottish twang coming from her as well. So it's just I'm kind of fascinated by her accent, so I was just trying to place yours, and I just couldn't place it. If I'd have guessed, I would have said Canadian.
Oh, good on you. Yeah.
I think if you can't place that,
I would have guessed Scotland for you.
Really?
Well,
you think so? Is it that strong? Is it?
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's funny though. It's one of those accents that like always gets picked up. Like I feel like. Same with any accent. If you hang around that person for long enough, you start to pick up a little bit of their accent. Yeah, but a lot of people start picking up, especially the Scottish. I and we.
Yeah. I and we gets picked up very easily. Let me tell you that. I honestly thought then when I was listening to you, I thought, is he Scottish? Because sometimes you hear like Scottish people and they go abroad to stay in America or Canada and Australia, but you can always hear that Scottish twang. So I could hear a Scottish twang in your accent.
Yeah, my grandmother was Scottish. Yeah.
I thought there must be some Scottish blood in there somewhere.
Yeah, there's a little bit for sure. Yeah, I'm actually half Scottish. My grandmother and my grandfather on my other side were Scottish, then Irish and English, and that's why I've got this, Celtic skin. Probably a bit of a sunburn at the moment.
Similar skin colours, man.
Yeah,
very similar. That ginger skin, that ginger Celtic skin. Now, before we delve into exactly who you are and what it is you do, I have to say that this is very much it's a no niche podcast. We come from like a travel couple background, so a lot of these guys have come over from the travel couple realm. So it's a lot of what we do has been centered around like travel and relationships and all that kind of stuff. So there will be some people who are listening to this who will have an idea about what you're talking about. They will have heard about it before or shown an interest in it before. But there will probably be a lot of people like me who have not been educated in what you've got to say. So basically what I'm saying is keep it stupid simple. Like, you know, the KISS technique, keep it stupid simple. Just because obviously I want to get enough people, including myself, just to engage in what you've got to say, because obviously you know what you're doing, you're an expert in your field. So we want to learn as much from you as we possibly can. Happy with that?
Cool, yeah.
Now I labelled you as a movement expert, which I'm sure is probably very vague and does you a bit of disservice to what you actually do. So why don't you tell us in your words what it is you do?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think movement expert's probably a good title. I jump around so much because there's so many different modalities that I study and practice. But I probably should just buckle down on one. So movement expert is super accurate. And to kind of keep it simple, you know, I started in yoga, and I think like a lot of people have a bit of intimidation towards things like yoga, because it can often bring up an image of, you know, maybe a handstand or like
and all that
yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah, like some of these more intimidating poses.
Yeah.
But the way that I teach movement is a little bit simpler, as you were speaking to, and you know, it's something that we can practice at all times. So like as we're sitting here, we have the opportunity to move and to sit in a certain way. Not all sitting's the same, right? So
yeah, Roche, you've got a very
for example,
good posture, and I'm like very slumped and very like, you know.
Totally,
I'm sure you're reading me as I speak, and you're probably seeing me so you can make me sit better and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think body posture and like reading people's body posture is so important. They say that that's like, you know, 50 to 80% of the conversation, like more than our actual words are. So it's like, it's a useful tool to have to be able to pick up on the, you know, the subtler cues of people's body language. And it can be kind of intimidating as well. A lot of people, you know, when I kind of walk in the room with people, I kind of start to notice people's sphincters start to clench, and you know, kind of chest starts to pop out, which is, I guess, good. Like, I guess it's kind of working. Like, and I don't mean to like intimidate people, but I do naturally like read that. It's my work.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as we're sitting here, you know, we've got the opportunity to have like a nice stacked spine, as opposed to like, you know, having your tailbone tucked like a sad dog, you know, and that kind of range of motion emulates a range of emotion as well, right? So the way that we move, the way that you walk through a room is the way that you walk through life, essentially, right? And so, you know, when you take a look at someone walking through a room with their shoulders kind of, you know, covering their heart and their tail kind of tucked and like, you know, maybe a little bit slower and hesitant, like that says a lot about their personality, right?
Wow, so you can read a lot about just the way someone walks into a room. You can say a lot about that person's personality.
Absolutely,
and how maybe they're feeling and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, well, every feeling is associated with a movement, but every movement is also associated with a feeling. So a really interesting study done by Amy Cuddy is, you know, the power pose with your arms up in the air, or like hands on the hips, you know, is another one. And just moving into that posture for 2 minutes starts to increase your testosterone and drop your cortisol. Wow. Cortisol being like the stress hormone, testosterone being like the power hormone. And then the opposite is also true. You know, when you start to come in like a slouched over, hunched position, your cortisol goes up, your stress goes up, and your testosterone goes down. So it's like
just one simple movement, one simple adjustment
that's
can make a massive difference.
2 minutes, but I mean, imagine if we were like practicing this all day. And again, it doesn't have to be a handstand or a power pose. And of course, you're not going to walk around like this all day. Maybe you are. You probably
after a few
would.
drinks,
yeah. Everyone's got that one friend, right?
I'm that guy. Yep.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't even need a couple drinks.
No, just walk about. So
yeah, it's good though. It says something about you. Yeah,
I think that's fascinating, man. That just one simple change can make a massive difference just to your mood. I never knew that something as simple as that can relieve stress and release these kind of emotions as well. That's fascinating, man.
Yeah, and so those are like kind of extreme examples, like kind of like ends of the spectrum. But there's like a lot more subtle things that we can do that make littler differences throughout the day.
Yeah.
Littler is not a word.
It is on this podcast.
Smaller differences, yeah.
You can say whatever you want on this podcast. We are little or whatever you want to say, man.
Yeah, totally, yeah. But then, like, to that as well, like, some people can overdo it, right? You know, some people are, like, purposely trying to flare their chest up, and that starts to flare through the ribs.
So you can actually take it too far.
Well, yeah, because, you know, if I walk into rooms like this, like, then I'm going to probably start to intimidate people. And naturally, usually, if you read the conversation, the second conversation, the body language conversation, one person will usually be tall and stacked, and the other person will actually kind of hunch over. It's the same thing in the animal kingdom, or, you know, when people win or lose things like races or sports events, you know, winner always throws up their arms. Even if they're blind, even if they can't see, they've done studies, they still throw up their arms. That's like the sign of victory throughout humankind and
that's just an
animal
natural reaction.
Yeah. And then the same thing is true, like, when people lose, like, they start to, and not even when they lose, even when, like, their sports team loses, you know, if you look at crowds of people and their body language between winning teams and losing teams, their whole body says everything.
Slumped,
and you can,
hands,
and if you start to pay attention to it, like, you can tell, like, if I showed you a picture of a winning crowd versus a losing crowd, you'd be able to tell right away without hearing their voices or knowing any circumstances.
Just one picture.
Yeah. So I think it's just like a cool tool to be able to tap into.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool. So you think someone can naturally just change the way they feel? They can almost portray a look of confidence or happiness just by making that subtle change of just throwing the shoulders back and just changing the posture ever so slightly.
Yeah, well, it's like fake it till you make it is kind of the name of the study, but, like, it's true. It's like, you know, if I'm feeling, you know, happy and I'm releasing endorphins and raising my testosterone, dropping my cholesterol, like, is that real? Yeah, of course it's real. Yeah.
That's amazing, man. That's cool.
So with that, the Blissful Movements theory, which is kind of like my business's theory, and the whole thing is realizing that there's actually three parts to ourself. So there's our physical self, which is quite obvious, you know, our physical postures, skin, bones, flesh. And then there's our mental self, you know, between the pipes, all the thoughts that go on. And then there's our energetic self as well. So that's within our body, the energy centers that we have. And those in Western science look like our endocrine system, right? So it's our glands that produce hormones. And so the theory goes that if you affect any two, you start to affect the third. So if you change yourself physically and you change yourself mentally, energetically you're going to start to change. Or if you change yourself energetically and you change yourself mentally, physically you're going to start to change.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, man.
I hope that was kind of simple enough.
That is simple. It's like a triangle, you know. You just change two corners of the triangle. It's almost like a maths equation.
That's it.
You know.
That's it.
That's fascinating, man. When I heard that or thought of you as a movement coach, the only time I'd ever seen or heard anything like this before, and I don't know if you're aware of this guy, but it was when Conor McGregor worked with the Israeli movement coach. I think his name was Ido Portal.
Yeah.
So are you aware of this guy and what he does, and is it anything like what you do?
Yeah, he's a little bit more extreme. So his movement is incredible, and he teaches, like, really profound movements and, like, really extreme kind of versions of movements that normal people probably can't do, or you know, everyday people or probably could do with enough training. But for me, I usually coach people that are, you know, kind of your average person that is looking to improve their movement, is looking to improve their mentality or improve their energy levels.
Right. So his is maybe more physical, because obviously Conor McGregor's training for this fight. He's doing all these crazy movement exercises, but whereas yours is just a lot more subtle changes, just for people, everyday people who have got jobs and stuff like that, are just looking to make small changes in their life. Well, small changes which can make a big change. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not training Conor McGregor to fight in UFC. I mean, not yet. But I'd be more so looking at your average person who might be, you know, spending, you know, 6 to 8 hours at a desk, and, like, that sedentary lifestyle of, you know, sitting like this in that hunched over position is going to start to shape you physically, but also start to change your mental state and your energetic state, right? So there's things that you can do, subtle changes that we can make to actually improve yourself throughout the day. And you know, yoga and fitness don't belong in a yoga studio or a gym for 1 hour a few times a week, but actually belong in all aspects of our life. So, we can practice yoga right now, essentially, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Exactly. I mean, again, I'll go back to my fiancée, Vanna. She's very conscious because she had an office job for years. She's very conscious that she noticed her natural posture is like this. So she'll be fascinated with this episode. She'll be taking notes about how she can make changes just to make her posture better, but obviously by knowing that if she makes her posture better, it'll obviously help with her energy and her mental state as well.
Totally, yeah. And one thing that you can do, like, while sitting is if you're forced to go on your laptop or whatever, get down on the floor is really good. So anytime you can start to sit like this, you actually start to ground yourself energetically, but you're also starting to work into opening up your hips. Western people, we all have these beautiful inventions called toilets, right? That we sit on. So we don't actually get down onto the ground or get back up. You might even know an elderly person that has said something along the lines of, if I got down on the ground, I wouldn't be able to get back up. And that's truthful, because, a fall rate is the most debilitating rate in all of elderly people nowadays, right? It's like the rate of like falling and can't get up. But if you come to a place like Bali, like that's not existent. Like elderly people, like, what do you mean fall and can't get up? Like, I'm just getting up off the ground. Of course they can do that. And that's primarily because they don't use raised toilets. That it's actually like a hole in the ground. So every time that they move, or every time that they have to make a bowel movement, they actually have to squat all the way down. And then, so just that idea that like movement doesn't necessarily belong in the yoga studio or the gym, but like in little things, like not necessarily, I guess going to the toilet, but
day-to-day
also
life.
like if you're on your laptop, like get down on the ground and
sit like cross-legged on the ground and just would you just have your laptop in front of you? Or?
Well, ideally I'd have it kind of eye
Raised.
level as well. So that's like another thing. A lot of places, especially in Asia, have myopia. So like their vision actually is another thing that's being affected because of our environment, right? So they're always staring at things that are really close, and they've actually started to lose the ability to see long distances. So that's another great exercise you can do, is like just step outside and try to focus on something that's like really, really far away. And a lot of people are losing that ability because our environment's starting to shape us, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, no, it's fascinating. I think I need to give that one a try myself, because my natural is just to like slump, and that's just a naturally comfortable position. But I might give that a go, because I've done a wee bit of yoga in the past. And sat the cross-legged, and instantly you can feel your whole posture start to adjust. And if you're not used to it, it does feel very uncomfortable. So obviously you've got to retrain your muscles. At that point. But if you can train up with slump, you can train up with straight and back up.
Totally, So what's happening there is like your front muscles are actually contracting and shortening, right? And your back muscles are actually lengthening. So you're sitting like this all day. There's something actually happening constantly. It's like your back muscles constantly being stretched, right? And so working towards like stacking the spine again is a really beautiful practice that you can do pretty much any time of the day, right? Anytime you're sitting, like, it's not just sitting, it's actually an opportunity.
That's really cool, because I take it you've got more of a balance between the stomach muscles and the back muscles.
Totally, your front and your back will start to lengthen or shorten respectively. And then like another way to see, ideally what you want is just a really stacked spine. And
is that just like a curvature in the base, or? So
there's 3 spinal curves, but not really worth getting into. But like a good test that you can do is if you have, for example, your partner, if you came around and like pressed on top of her shoulders, and she would start to feel where there's claps. So for you, it's right around your lumbar thoracic spine. But it's good to pay attention, and you'll notice where you're collapsing.
So you try and straighten it at that point.
So that's like an exaggeration of what gravity is doing, but we're actually in relation with gravity's weighing down on our shoulders or on us at all times. And so it's just being aware of like how you are moving with that weight on you, right? And if you're slightly shaped forward, if you can imagine like kind of like a pin with like a ball on top of it, and if that ball starts to roll a little too far to either side, like the whole thing's going to topple over, right? And that's that weight that we have, and your head is kind of that ball oftentimes. So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting analogy. I like it. Now you go by the name Blissful Movements. So how did you come up with that name, and are there any connotations you want to promote through that name?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been fortunate enough to experience moments of bliss in my life, as I'm sure many other have. And I've been through many different, startups and businesses of my own, and some of them more aligned, some of them less aligned. And after experiencing a really profound moment of like pure bliss, I was like, this is it. Like, how do I bottle this thing up and get it out and like drink it for breakfast and give it to everyone? And so that's kind of been my mission for the past year and a half, 2 years, is to just create bliss in my life and in others' lives, and teach people how to start to promote ways to like incorporate this bliss into their life. And it's something that I've found through, the modalities that I teach, physical, mental, and energetic. So there's a couple things that we do. One is I have Bliss sessions, so it's a breathwork session with movement and also talk therapy, like mindfulness coaching. And then the other thing is we actually have a course as well to kind of essentially teach you everything that I know about movement, mindfulness, and energies, which is like a 3-week quick shifts course, and it's incredible. And then thirdly, we do retreats and I guess fourthly, the podcast as well. Yeah, so there's kind of a whole bunch under the umbrella. Mm-hmm. But I want people to experience bliss, and it's so profound and can really open you up to a lot more than the average lifestyle permits. And there's little tools and tips and tricks and hacks to find your way to bliss, I find. And so I want to be able to find those continuously in my life and to be able to share those with other people.
It's very unique, man. I think one of the best things that you can do is make a positive impact in someone else's life. And if you can bring bliss to others, then that's a very unique quality to have, and a very fulfilling quality to have as well. I think a lot of people spend too much time trying to bring negative influences on other people, and the fact that you're trying to bring bliss, it's a very special quality, man. Very special quality.
Yeah, I think like my business definitely speaks to that as well, in such a way that it's not always necessarily financially the most successful business, and that is largely due to me not overworking myself. And I'm primarily a one-man team with a couple helping hands here and there, but I've always prioritized like my own health and my own time and my own energy above everything else,
because that's what you practice. You practice what you preach, right?
Yeah. Totally. And I think just aligning with that is a beautiful way to kind of really emulate what the whole business means. And I think when people start catching on to that, that'll start to build organically, and that's my hope.
That's a great description of your business, man. I think you've gave everyone a lovely little insight to what it is Blissful Movements do. So I appreciate that, man. Now, what did you do? What did you do before this, or was there never a before this? Is this something you've always been passionate about, or is there a previous life to the Blissful Movements?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, it's funny that you asked me. I was thinking about this beforehand. I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, and pretty funny sometimes, drinking whiskey on the podcast.
And I was going to bring a whiskey today, but I'm a bit flustered, and I've had a few drinks the last few days, so I'm a little bit hoarse. My voice is a little bit hoarse because I've had too much to drink. So I think a bottle of whiskey would have just pushed me over the edge, especially when we're trying to talk about bliss.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one way to get there, maybe. It's funny because I used to live a very, very different life, kind of before traveling really is kind of what started to crack me open to some of these changes. But I was very, I grew up in Canada playing hockey with a funny bunch of guys that were kind of, I guess you guys would call them like lads.
Lads.
Yeah.
Lads.
Yeah, we call them just the boys, But it was a very different group of guys, and pretty funny as well. Like, you know, lots of parties, and you know, we all played pretty competitive hockey growing up, and kind of you know, ran our high schools and college and stuff, and yeah, it was a very, very different life. And looking back now, it's something that, like, I'm glad that I did, but also, like, I'm glad that that was a phase in my life and not continued on with that. And I think travel's just been one of the best ways to open me up to so many different possibilities, and like not necessarily reaching to, you know, substances or to clinging on to even like potentially toxic groups of people, but actually opening my eyes up to, you know, all these other things that promote bliss and enjoyment and excitement and adventure into my life as well. And I guess like through travel, there was I grew up in a bit of a dysfunctional family, as well as, you know, most people do in some way, shape, or form. But and then, you know, travel was kind of always a way for me to look to find home. And that was kind of always the goal. It's like, where can I find home? Where can I plant down the roots? And through the practice of yoga, I was able to kind of find home. And it's funny, like, I traveled the world to find it, and it was always right here.
I think that's what we're all trying to do. All us travellers are trying to find somewhere where we can lay our hat, you know, and call home. But yeah, I think, as you say, it is more inward. You know, there's not a particular place where you'll find that is bliss. You know, it's got to come from inside. So now, again, as a traveller myself, I can really relate to that. You know, so interesting, very interesting. And what was it that really spiked your interest? Was there like a particular moment, or was there a person where you thought, this is what I want to do? It was just like a eureka moment, or was it just something that gradually happened? Or
yeah, I mean, I think like any profound change happens gradually to some extent, but there definitely was one moment that, you know, I remember thinking like, holy shit, like this is bliss. Like, what's happening here? You know, like full, like sober but out of body experience. And I was in between yoga classes. Actually, I was like being a bit of a go-getter, going to like 2 classes, but one was like a intensity one, and one was like a really relaxed one. So it was kind of the normal routine for me. And there's some random guy that was he wasn't random. I had seen him before, and we had kind of talked, but I didn't know him all that well. And he just asked like, "Hey, can I do this thing on you?" And I was like, you know,
sounds ominous.
Yeah, a bit like skeptical, but you're like
open-minded. Here we go.
Yeah, totally. And so that's like, I've found like through hearing people's blissful stories, like one of the key ingredients is like this feeling and this act of surrender. And so that was kind of the first part. I said, yeah, sure. Like, I don't know what it is, but I'll just surrender to whatever you want to do to me. You know, like we're in a yoga studio.
Could have went either way.
Yeah, could have went either way. So anyway, he's like, yeah, just lie down. So I just lied down, and, you know, I was feeling pretty chill after a yoga class, like really good, and just in a really beautiful place. And he ended up grabbing these Tibetan singing bowls. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this singing bowl, but it essentially is a bowl that creates this sound, and then you kind of rub the baton around the outside, and it continues to sing.
So through vibration and
through
stuff
vibration,
like that. Yeah, I think I've seen that before. Yeah,
beautiful. And so he started playing it, like 3 of them, like all around my head and around my body, and then like he put them close to a fire and like warmed them up and like placed it on my heart. Wow. And then like played it, and my whole body started like vibrating with the bowl, and it was like just the first time I had kind of experienced like energetic healing, and it was vibration that was so aligned with something that was bigger than me. And I realized to some people that might sound a little crazy, but that was my experience. And
that was the moment, that was the defining moment where you thought there's something.
Well, I completely let go. I just surrendered to whatever was happening, and I started laughing and crying like uncontrollably, like at the same time. And it was just like kind of like it was incredible, like
euphoria.
Absolute bliss is the only word that I can.
Bliss and euphoria.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what that was, but that was bliss. It's
the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool, man. That's good. And have you tried that since, the Tibetan singing bowls?
Yeah, lots. Yeah.
And do you practice that yourself? Is it something you practice with people? Or?
Yeah. So I've just got one singing bowl at the moment. You know, kind of traveling, it's hard to bring bowls, but something that like is just really, it's one of those things, you know, when you hear it, it takes you back to that time But I find the more that I try to recreate that situation, the less potent it actually is.
Right.
So it's pretty funny to play with. And like I said, that one common theme, I ask people all the time, have you ever experienced a moment of bliss? And if so, what was your experience like, and what brought you to it? And surrender seems to almost always be one of the key ingredients to experiencing bliss,
right.
which is really tough to do because, the ego and us, we want to like attach to things.
Yeah.
We're like, I experienced this, and it's like, it can't be the I experienced this. It's got to be just letting go of the I and just
placing your trust in everything in someone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
have you ever experienced a moment of bliss?
Not to that extent. I don't think. No, I feel like I need to get myself some Tibetan singing bowls now and give it a go.
Yeah, we'll have a go.
I can't put my finger on a defining moment of bliss, but again, it's something that we're all searching for in some way, shape, or form.
I'd like to hope so. Yeah.
Again, not to that. I'm sure I've had small moments of bliss, but nothing that it's just like a complete, surrender and something that's completely registered on my mind.
Yeah.
Or maybe it happened when I was drunk one night and I just can't remember, So I don't know. Maybe I have and I just can't remember.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's the funny thing too, is like more and more I'm starting to realize that like it doesn't have to be this big aha moment.
Yeah.
But like bliss can start to be incorporated in every little aspect of our life. Sometimes like I'll have micro doses of bliss, when I'm just like riding my scooter,
and there's no traffic on the road.
Yeah. Or like catching a really good wave, or not even catching a wave, just being in the ocean. You can start to just dial into it, and then it becomes more of a
sunsets
practice.
and stuff like that. You can take a lot. Small blesses.
That's one movement pattern that almost always gets me. So anyone out there that really wants to experience, a micro movement of bliss or just to experience happiness is like just turning your head up to the sky and then smiling up at the sky, like whether it's the sky or the ceiling, almost always is just like you can't help but like feel this overwhelming sense of joy and like smile, and there's some hormones released that just I feel like connect you to something bigger than yourself when you move into that range of motion or range of emotion.
Just smile at the sky, at the ceiling. Imagine someone walking in, you're just like smiling.
Arms up in the air.
Just smiling at the ceiling.
That'll be you on your way out.
That'll be me. I'll better not do it when I'm driving, just like driving, looking at the sky and smiling at the sky. That'll wait till I get home. I mean, these are all small little things that you can incorporate into your day if you're having a bad day or you're having a bad moment or experience. Subtle things like this can make a huge difference to your mood and to how you feel. So they're good. They're great little tidbits, I must say. I'm definitely going to try and smile at the ceiling a lot more going forward. I'm going to look into these Tibetan bowls. So I appreciate your insight, man. I know there's a lot of value you're giving.
I think it's the little wins throughout the day that start to add up, right?
Because they can add up to a big one. They can really add up to a big one. So, no, absolutely. Again, a lot of people don't see the small things either because they're too caught up in the negativity. So I think you've got to look for the small things. You've got to be aware of them and appreciate them when they happen. When
you start looking for the good things, that you start to see them. When you start looking for the bad things, you start to see them.
Absolutely. So, who would you say? Have you got any idols or people that you look up to within this industry?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's one guy that I kind of like base my whole life off of, which sounds a bit obsessive, but like I just think he's so smart. And his name's Aaron Alexander. He's got a book that just came out called The Alignment Method, and he talks a lot about a lot of the same stuff that I cover as well, like ranges of motion and that translating to kind of your archetype sort of thing. And he's just brilliant. I base a lot of my knowledge off of kind of his teachings and I guess that's kind of the physical movement side, and then the mental side. Ram Dass is an incredible spiritual teacher.
Okay.
He's just like brilliant. He was like a Harvard professor that like got kicked out to pursue like spirituality, and he's pretty cool as well. So those are kind of my two go-to guys.
Guys. And do you find
them? And then you, of course.
Of course, me. Coming in at number 3.
Yeah.
Just closely following these guys. I'm happy with that. I can take that. And how do you incorporate everything that you spoke about? How do you incorporate this into your day-to-day life? Like, talk us through a normal day from when you get up to maybe till you go to bed. Is there certain practices that you personally do as part of a routine every day?
Yeah, there's so many. I don't want to bore you with all the details, but a few like interesting ones that, you know, might not be part of people's typical morning routine sort of thing is a couple yogic practices. One is, you know, you have what's called a neti pot, and it's essentially this kind of funny shaped pot that you fill up with like salt water, and then you pour it up one nostril and it pours out the other nostril. And so it clears your sinuses every single day. And it's a great way to like activate, you know, your breath. And if you're like even slightly suffocated through, you know, whatever's up there, boogers or dust or pollen or whatever, that's going to start to affect your entire body. Like, it's going to start to, imagine you being slightly suffocated, you know, that would start to trigger a panic response.
I must admit, I've got a football injury from when I was younger. I got just a clash of heads, and it's almost like a collapsed nostril that I've got on this side. So I'm always like very conscious, like I'm always like breathing, and I always do this, like always touch my nose, because it does aggravate me. And I was actually meant to get an operation on it before we left to go travel. So it's something that I'm hoping to get corrected at some point, because it really does affect the way that I breathe sometimes, because I'm constantly feel like it's suffocating me, especially if I get a cold and this nostril all of a sudden starts to feel clogged. Then I'm really always aware of it, you know.
So that's interesting. There's a couple points. So do you breathe through your nose mostly or your mouth?
I probably my mouth more so, because I feel like I can't breathe through my nose as much.
So breathing through your mouth is actually going to change your whole like hormonal structure within your body.
And in a good way or a bad way?
Well, it depends, you know. If you think of like mouth breathing, you think of like running, you know, which is kind of sympathetic, like fight or flight response. Whereas if you're breathing through your nose, it's more of like a calm down, relax, rest and digest, parasympathetic response. But then there's the other thing. Is it one nostril?
Just one nostril.
Okay, yeah. So that's another interesting thing, is that, you know, in Eastern philosophy, it's like masculine and feminine. So left being your feminine side, and your right being your masculine side.
So my left side can breathe perfectly well.
So you'd probably be more in tune with like your feminine side.
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, maybe. It's I find it to be really true, actually.
Really?
And so a good practice to do is you can do like nadi shodhana, or like alternative nostril breathing. So you kind of cover one nostril, breathe in through it, and then breathe out through the other, and then switch. So breathe in through the other one, and then out through the opposite one. And that's to balance your nadis, is what we call them in yoga. And it's essentially your energy channels. And then from like a scientific point of view, the kind of Western philosophy, that's kind of accessing your left and your right hemisphere, right? So, you know, you're either analytical, doing side, or your kind of creative, artsy side. Right.
I think I've activated the creative side.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So that's
my creative feminine side. I'm a very creative, feel like a creative woman.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. So it's good to like activate one or the other depending on, but ideally we want to kind of be balanced.
So in theory, if I was to get this nostril corrected, would that change?
I find it to be true. It's my experience that very much so. And sometimes like I'll catch myself like either really in the doing, like really in the masculine, and then like when I go to check which nostril is blocked, because I also do this thing called a neti sutra, which is essentially like a string, but it's like a rubber string, and you kind of shove it up the nostril. It's a little bit more gruesome.
Right.
And then you pull it out like through your mouth, and
so
you kind of
floss.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And typically one side will be a little bit more blocked, and that almost always is like the side that I'm not activating, like on an energetic level. Okay.
And this is part of your daily routine.
Is this too esoteric?
No, I'm enjoying this, man. This is a great insight. I knew you would be flossing tonsils at any point, you know?
Yeah.
So is this something you do as part of your daily routine then?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And the salt water through the nose.
Yeah, so salt first, and then I'll do the neti sutra.
Do you do this every morning? Or?
Yeah. And I'll notice if I don't do it. You know, I try to do it every morning. If I go for a surf, sometimes I don't, because I just get salt water up there anyway. Yeah. Otherwise it helped. It makes such a dramatic difference. And I used to have quite bad sinus problems as well, and it's like the most natural way to just fix my sinuses. And I mean, you can't argue with that. Like it's
So,
like free, and it's beautiful. And I find like in the health world, you know, a lot of the best things are just free. Like, you know, sit organic, properly, go for a walk, like spend some time in sunlight or around some trees or some plants, like put salt water up your nose, put salt,
flush your tonsils.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That again, I keep going back to my fiance. She would love this. She would absolutely love this.
I have to meet her, man.
You have to meet her. Yeah. Unfortunately, she's in Perth right now. She's got an eye injury. That's another story, but she is.
What happened to her eye?
She actually got an infection here in Bali. She got an eye infection. It's really severe.
Is she just winking at you all the time?
Probably, you know. But unfortunately, she got we think it was a pool that she got a bacterial infection. It went really severe, and she's at the point now where she's actually the infection's gone, the hole's gone in her eye, but she's got a really bad scar on her cornea. So she may need to get surgery to have it repaired. But
you're kidding?
Yeah, so that's a different story. So she's meeting the surgeon on this Wednesday coming. I don't when this podcast is aired, she's probably been to the hospital already. But she's meeting the surgeon this Wednesday coming, just to discuss the possibilities that where she might need to go. But she is fascinated with, you know, auras and postures and the mind and, you know, natural remedies. She loves all that because her parents are Croatian. So everything that they do, especially when it comes to medicines and health and foods, everything is organic. Which kind of leads me on to my next question, actually. I was going to ask is, like, how important is a healthy diet and eating the right things? How important is this to what you do?
Yeah, super important. I mean, nutrition's obviously up there. I studied nutrition, like an integrative nutrition course at IIN. Although I don't have the best diet, if I'm brutally honest. I love ice cream, and it's so hot here. I constantly have them. But it's interesting, what we were taught in the integrative nutrition course was that there's like the secondary food is the food that you actually put in your mouth, and your primary food are all the other things in your life that nourish you. Right. So, you know, things like your physical activity, your spirituality, your relationships, your career. Like all these things, there's 12 of them that kind of jump around a circle, but these things are all nourishing you as well. And I think that's a really beautiful way to live, to be able to nourish yourself and fill yourself up with, you know, healthy relationships, or, you know, your physical activity, or all the other things that fill you up. Okay.
So you're not like a vegan, or are you into any of that kind of stuff, or are you into like natural?
I used to be vegan. Now I'll do like fish. So vegetarian with a bit of fish. Okay. Yeah.
Do you try and eat as organically as possible when you do eat?
Yeah, that's for sure. I guess I do eat relatively healthy. I try to do organic, especially for like anything that has to do with like soy, or like any, you know, the dirty dozen, or like the top 12 foods that are like really full of pesticides, and you really should eat organic if you are doing that. I think like apples, avocados, and I can't remember the whole list, but there's certain foods that you like, if you're eating them non-organic, you're getting a lot of extra toxins with them as well. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. A diet's something I really struggle with. So
do you? Yeah.
I'm not doing very well. I'm slunched. I've got one nostril. I don't eat well.
But you got the whitest teeth in the game.
I've got the whitest teeth in the game. There we go. I've got something up.
I still think they're fake. Yeah.
Listen, I've had this since high school.
That's brilliant.
I've not got any fillings or anything. They're completely natural, man. Completely natural. Just I've got a few mocha stains on there. I like a mocha every day, so they could do a wee clean. But apart from my teeth, there's a lot of things that you could improve for me, because I'm probably like your perfect before picture. You know, perfect before.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see before and after pictures.
No.
A bit cruel, I think. Yeah.
But if you were looking for a before picture, I'd be the perfect one, because there's a lot that needs repaired.
Take a snapshot.
And there's a lot that needs repaired here. Now, for those of people who I want to say find it easy to make excuses, or, you know, they just don't feel comfortable going to like a gym or a yoga studio. You know, and they don't feel comfortable in those kind of environments, because I admit there has been times in my life especially when I was younger, when you walk into a gym for the first time and you see all these ripped guys using the machines, and you look at these machines and you go, what the hell are they? How do you work them? Or you go into a yoga studio for the first time, and, you know, people are downward dog and they're doing all the poses. Everyone looks like they know what they're doing and getting into positions you can't even imagine getting into. Is there any things that you know, they could do to incorporate into their lives and routines, maybe just small things, so they don't physically need to go to a gym or a yoga class?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing that you can do is start to develop a little home practice, right? I mean, it's so easy to jump on YouTube or to do, you know, one of the courses that I've got available as well. And to, you know, get a little bit of practice on how to incorporate the basics, the foundations at least, before you walk in a yoga studio. Because you know what, like, it's super intimidating. I totally get that. Like, to walk in, I get intimidated in some yoga studios when I walk in, and that's just, you know, it's always the ego talking, you know, am I that good, you know? But ideally, you know, hopefully it's a nice yoga studio where people are really welcoming and warm, and that's kind of the vibe that you want. And a lot of people go into these studios and won't come back because they're like, you know, that was not what I expected, or that was just too much. Yeah. And so, like, I think it's just really important to, you know, meet yourself where you're at, and like a good teacher will meet you where you're at as well, not let their ego get in the way and teach something that, you know, they want to teach, or they think that the students want to teach, but rather something that the students actually need. And I mean, I've got a course coming out that's like for yoga fundamentals, and so it's like going to be you know, just a 7-day challenge where it's like a different yoga class that builds progressionally each day, and you know, someone can do this in the comfort of their own home.
So it's an online course that you're developing.
Totally. Yeah. And with that, I mean, even a home practice can be intimidating to start and tough. You think like, oh, what do I need? You know, do I need the tights? Do I need the you know, all the things. Like, the truth is, that's the beautiful thing about yoga, is like all you need is a little bit of space. That's it.
Enough space for one of the mats that you get.
Yeah,
just like a
or
yoga
even
mat.
Like throw down a towel. Like, don't make an excuse for you know, I don't have this. It's so easy to make the excuses.
It's really easy.
Like, just if you've got some space, you can practice. And even if you don't have like a lot of space, you know, when you sit there and practice some pranayama, some gentle breathing techniques, like that is practicing yoga as well, right? And starting to play with the nervous system. Right. The physical practice of yoga is one of the 8 limbs of yoga, so it's essentially 1/8 of the actual. So practice. There's another 7 that you can practice. there's a lot more to it, okay. And the asana, the physical practice, is probably one of the tougher parts, right? Okay. Like physically, but
so you could introduce yoga into your life, maybe through breath or something like that first, and just start off and leave the physical movements to further down the line when you feel a little bit more confident.
Yeah, I think like the physical movements, in my perspective, are actually more for setting yourself up for a clean breath and for stillness. Really, it's to be able to sit still for longer periods of time, I find. Right. Yeah.
Interesting. I want to talk a wee bit more about yoga, actually, because when I used to play football, yoga was something that I was never really aware of until later in my career. Yoga was always looked upon as like something like a female dancer would do, or a ballet dancer would do. Have you ever been aware of these kind of like stereotypes and connotations? And if so, have you noticed like a massive change in recent years? Because yoga just seems to have exploded in the last few years.
Yeah, it definitely has. And it's funny because yoga traditionally was only for men and only taught by men. And then in the past, I'd say 20 years, it kind of took off in the female market. You know, it was really, really sexy for girls to practice yoga, and it was really easy to market to them. And the leggings, like, I mean, you know, Lululemon's making so much money on leggings.
Big industry.
Yeah, and so that's why it really got marketed to them, and then I can only, like, men are starting to come around to it too and practice a lot more, which is really nice to see the men kind of come back into something that's so nurturing to the body rather than, you know, maybe abusive. I might call some gym workouts. Yeah. A bit of a stab there, but
like CrossFit or something, is it, by any chance? Something like
that? Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, you know, our movement practice and our physical practice should be nurturing to the body. It doesn't, you know, when you hear people like, oh, I can't walk the other day, I just absolutely crushed it at the gym, and it's like, what is the why behind that exactly? Yeah, it's like, are you working towards, you know, muscles that are big and short-lived? And you know, how we do anything is how we do everything. So that big and short-lived muscle is going to be how you are going to live, right? But if we're working towards longevity, if we want a long life, you know, you want lengthened muscles, you want the flexibility, you want the long nourished muscles and joints, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the beautiful part about practice. I can't remember what the original question was.
Let me go back. I was about the stereotypes.
Stereotypes,
And connotations about like how it used to just be a practice for ballet dancers or dancers, but you know, there's been a big change in the last few years. I've noticed it massively.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's the real soft side of it that can be really beautiful and nurturing, but I mean, you get a lot of the men in, you know, that might be footballers or, you know, like hockey players even, you get them in a yoga class and they'll have a hard time, most of them. And it's interesting to watch, and I just love it. I mean, I don't really pay attention to the stereotypes much. I do what feels good for me and continue to do that.
So you've never found it difficult with the stereotype situation? Is it just because it's more accepted recently? Because ever since you started practicing?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why I travel so much, just to like, if anyone starts chirping, I just take a hike to the next town or city. No, I don't pay much attention to that. I do what feels good for me, and I think that like the results of the practice start to show in myself, and I hope like people would just catch on to, you know, that light that I start to bring to my own life and to conversations and to, you know, my physical, mental, and energetic self.
You're in the best place in the world for yoga. It's part of everyone's daily routine here, basically.
Yeah.
You know, so it's almost like breakfast, yoga, dinner. You know what I mean? That's what it's like here. You know, it's part of everyone's routine. So I'm sure this is why you feel so at home here, because it's so accepted. Like self-care is so accepted here in Bali.
Which it should be everywhere,
should be.
right?
It should be.
But there's a lot of marketing, billions of dollars worth of marketing going into telling you that you're not enough, right?
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately how a lot of businesses succeed, is by portraying to people that they're not worth enough. And so there's this big thing that I'm trying to push right now, and it's like, do less and be more. Like, I think for so long we were told, you know, the more that you do, the more that you're worth, and the more that you're successful, and the more that you succeed, and the more that you're loved, right?
Yeah.
But for me, in looking back at my life, I think the times that I've felt the most blissful, the most good in my entire life, are the times that I'm literally doing nothing and like just surrendering. And I think that that's like a really beautiful practice that I'd really love to see a lot more people start to embrace, is, you know, either whether that's meditation or sound bowls or you know, journaling or simply just being with whatever emotion they're experiencing at this point in their life. I think is a really beautiful practice that can hold a lot of value in someone's life.
I must admit, I mean, when I was younger, yoga is something that I never seen myself doing, practicing, or whatever. But I remember the first time I ever tried yoga, it was me and my best friend, actually. We were both staying in Scotland, and I've got a flat in Scotland. We were living together, and there was a footballer named Ryan Giggs who played for Manchester United. And it was just around about that time where people like Ryan Giggs and David Beckham and, you know, the high-profile players started to mention yoga and how it prolongs their footballing careers. So, you know, when you're influenced by these players, you know, it's all of a sudden it's like yoga became kind of like a buzzword. And he released a DVD. It was like a yoga DVD. So me and my best mate went and bought this DVD, and we were like in the living room, like trying yoga for the first time. So that was the first time that I'd ever tried yoga. I can't remember if we enjoyed it or not. I think it was just more uncomfortable the fact that we're trying to do it in the living room together.
Was it a bit of laugh? Or?
It was it was good fun. We had a lot of fun, but I think it was quite difficult to follow. It was such an alien concept for us at this point, but that was the first time I'd ever tried it. But even now, like, it's something that I'm very much into self-care these days, especially in the last year, 2 years, for a whole host of different reasons. So I'm very aware that yoga, whenever I practice yoga, it definitely makes a massive difference to how I physically feel. I feel more like fluid, you know, and it definitely has a benefit to my mental state as well. But because when I'm back in Scotland, I've actually got a friend called Charlie, and she learned how to do yoga here, become a yoga teacher here. So she's got like an all men's class back in Scotland, and it's really cool to be in like an all men's yoga class in my hometown. Again, something I never thought I'd see. And there's guys, you know, from my age, younger, right up to like 50s and 60s taking yoga, and our classes are booming, you know.
Yeah.
So it's really taking off.
Are you still doing yoga?
Well, that's the thing. When I'm in Bali, last time we were in Bali, which was back in November, December, my fiance and I, we had a good routine of getting up. It was almost like every morning or every alternate morning, because Finn's, I've got like a yoga class
Right.
down in the lawn in the front grass at Finn's Beach Club. So we would go down there at 8 o'clock. You know, once you finish at 9 o'clock, you know, you've done yoga by the beach, in the sunlight, full of vitamin D. You're well stretched. Your mind's in a great place, and we just found it was a brilliant way to start the day. And I must admit, I've been slacking since I've been back. But this conversation, you know, I need to get back into it. I really need to get back into it, because I notice a difference. And I think that's a funny thing about humans. When you do something that makes you feel better, and then you just stop doing it, you know? It's just because it falls out of the routine, and then it's so hard to get back into it. And I'm the world's worst for that. But yeah, I'm definitely want to get back into it. I should get back down there and start getting into the yoga.
The hardest part is starting, right?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like with anything. Once you usually get into it, usually everything falls right into place, and it's easy as, right? And like you just said, it's like free, right?
Free.
All you need is a bit of space, and then you get to get outside, you get to move, you get to spend it with people, and talk and converse and start your day out.
It's a great way to start the day. I think it's absolutely brilliant way to start your day. Do you go into classes, or do you just do it on your own? Obviously, you know what you're doing, so I'm assuming you do it on your own.
Yeah, I have my own practice, which is varies from time to time in, you know, how I actually practice. It's more, you know, looking in and seeing what I need that day, and really embodying that for the day and putting that forward into my practice.
Excellent. Sounds good, man. Sounds good. I suppose when you know what you're doing, it's half the battle.
Yeah.
You know, you can just start doing and getting a headstand anywhere, you know.
Sure.
I used to notice some of your Instagram videos, like you're down at Duatiga, the cafe here, and you're just like on the grass, just doing like, you're doing your yoga poses and stuff, so you can just crack them at anywhere.
Yeah, that's like my dream, is to like have people incorporate movement into every aspect of their life. So like to be able to walk into a cafe and just see people like kind of stretching and moving, you know, like right now I kind of get like some looks sometimes, but I don't care. Like I'm like, why are you looking at me weird? Like I'm nourishing myself, you know, the same way that you're putting, you know, your smoothie bowl in your body right now. Like I'm giving myself movement nourishment. And I think it's that's like another important thing for me, is like when I pick my place to eat, I'll pick a place that, you know, I can play in, like either move or at least, you know, near plants. Or I think that our environment has such an impact on the way that we shape ourselves. So, you know, I don't go to any gym or any yoga studio, but I let my environment simply form me. If I've got, you know, a chin-up bar close by, like I'm going to start to use it. If I've got a yoga mat beside my bed, I'm going to use it every time I walk past it. Or weights, or, you know, a resistance band, or anything. Like we as humans are so adaptable, and so whatever container you put us in, we start to take that shape, right? And so, and I mean, same thing for people. You know, the type of people that you hang out with is going to start to shape your personality as well. So just really paying attention to that. And I mean, here it's so easy to let yourself form into, you know, a yogic, healthy smoothie bowl eating human being, right? And that's just because we're a product of our environment.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a gap in the market there now that you're speaking about, like a yoga themed cafe. You know, you go in, you get your mat, there's a wee table there, you know, a co-working space, a yoga themed co-working cafe.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Well, that's like low-key my dream one day.
Oh, really?
I'll have like a yoga cafe with like, you know, organic food on one side, and then like a yoga shala above it. And
you can sit and like smile at the sky as you
Yeah.
willy-nilly floss your tonsils.
That's
you know, in
it,
between
yeah.
smoothie bowls.
Yeah, for sure.
Living the yoga dream, my man. Living the yoga dream. Now, one thing I always try and touch on with this podcast is mental health.
Yeah.
Now, we have kind of briefly touched on it, but in terms of everything you do, is there a big connection between mental health and everything that you practice, would you say?
Yeah, huge. Most of the people that I work with suffer from some sort of anxiety or depression, and mental health is something that's, you know, really close to my heart. My sister goes through really severe anxiety and really severe depression, and that's largely, you know, why I do what I do, just trying to find hacks and ways to help out. Difficult doing it from afar, so I am moving back next week actually to go help her out with some things. I've been fortunate enough not to really go through much of anxiety or depression myself.
Do you think that's because of the way you live your daily life?
Yeah, I 100%.
Do you think if you didn't live this kind of lifestyle that you would be susceptible to mental health
Absolutely
issues?
more susceptible, yeah. I mean, they did studies with people who I think it was the drug Zoloft, which is like an antidepressant drug. And when they did clinical studies with people who, there's 3 groups, one that took Zoloft, one that took Zoloft and incorporated movement, like daily exercises, and then one group that just did daily exercises. And I think it was 80% of the people on Zoloft ended up relapsing, whereas I think it was only 8% of the people relapsed that did movement alone. So
right.
like, you know, it's funny, we're spending billions of dollars on these pharmaceuticals to like change our chemical balance within ourselves, within our brain, within our endocrine system, and that change is actually available to us through things like movement or mindfulness, you know, and need to affect the third, right?
Yeah.
That starts to affect our chemical or
yeah,
energetic system. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in movement being a medicine, as well as, you know, mindfulness and
massively, man. I must admit, just from a personal point of view, because I'm very vocal about my own mental health struggles, and I feel that everyone should be, because that's part of the therapy. And I've always felt like when I do move more, if I'm going through a low moment, I can if I generally analyse, take a step back and look at where I am, I'm not moving enough, there's not enough self-care, and just making the small changes, whether it's going to the gym or even just going a walk,
yeah,
or doing 10 push-ups, or just, you know, breathing properly, these all make a massive difference to me personally. So
thank you.
I'm a massive believer in self-care, a massive believer in movement, a massive believer in like breathing, all that kind of stuff. As much as I don't know much about it, it's just things that I've done in those moments that have made me feel better. Because I can't stand the pharmaceutical industry and how everyone just tries to fix things with pills. Absolutely, there are situations where you do need
totally
pills, but I'm a big believer in, if you can do everything but fill yourself full of pharmaceuticals, then do it as organically as you possibly can. Because I would never want to go down the route of having to take like antidepressants or all that kind of stuff, you know. I'd much rather try the organic way of doing things, because the body can correct itself. The body gets you into those situations, the body can get you out of those situations, you know. So I believe that as well, man.
Yeah, well, the same way that, you know, when your skin gets cut from something, you know, there's a whole bunch of biomechanical things that start to occur for your body to start to self-heal, and so too is true for your mental self, and for your energetic self. And walking is like one of the best things, because we can all walk. Unless you're paraplegic, but you know, we can all walk, and there's the same for sitting. You know, not all sitting is the same, not all walking is the same. So it's like one of the best hacks that I teach is like, try walking with anger, and then try walking with happiness, try walking with excitement, you know, and so when we start to walk, our postural patterns start to change, our movement patterns start to change, and we can tell the difference between walking with, you know, excitement versus walking with anger. And if you start to walk, you can literally like walk off a certain emotion, and walk in a certain way. So that's like there's a whole bunch more that I kind of get into in my course, but it's the simplest thing that we can all do. And walking is known to light up the same areas of the brain that meditation does, but even in a higher dosage. So it's like walking is like better than meditation for you in a mental aspect.
I believe that as well, because one of the things that I actually implemented, especially recently, because I've been trying to get fit and healthy again, because up until recently I would really just in terms of self-care, I'd not let myself go, but I was in terrible shape mentally and physically. And
we're hard on ourselves too.
We are hard on ourselves, some more than others. But I just found that one of the things, and I made 2 simple changes. I set myself a press-up challenge, which was number 1. And I told myself I'm going to try and do 5k a day, whether I'm running, walking, jogging, or whatever. I'll try and do 5k a day. The 5k a day at my slowest pace is like 50 minutes. everyone should spend at least 1 hour of their day on self-care, I believe, because it makes 23 of the rest of the hours of the day such a better place to live, you know. So these are just small changes that I made, and they made massive difference physically, a massive difference mentally, you know. And it's amazing. That's not barely changed my diet, lost loads of weight and all that kind of stuff, you know. It was just implementing small changes that can make such a huge difference.
Yeah.
You know. So for anyone else who might be suffering from their own mental health, or maybe just interested more about you, let's talk about where they can find more about you. So that kind of leads me nicely into your podcast, which we have touched on before. And again, I had a listen to it last night, and fair play to you, man, because I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts, believe it or not. I tend to find myself zoning out a lot of them, but I listened to yours last night, and it's really good, man. You've done it really well. It flows really well. That was one of the biggest things that I noticed. And it's completely tailored to your niche. So you've got some really great experts on there as well, and it's really cool to hear just from like someone who is not in that industry. It was very how would you say, engaging for someone who's not in that industry, you know. So really good podcast, man. So what's the name of your podcast, just for people to find it?
Yeah, it's the Blissful Movements podcast.
Okay. And where will you find that? It's on Apple and Spotify?
Everywhere you find podcasts, yeah. Apple, Spotify, the website, Google Play, yeah.
Well, I would recommend to anyone who might be watching this or listening to this to check out the podcast, because there's some really good stuff on there with some really, really good people. And are you interested? Maybe I noticed you never had video on your podcast. Is that something you're maybe interested in?
Yeah, we're gonna start incorporating video in soon. We're gonna do some YouTube stuff as well, just to bring you guys some visuals. But yeah, I mean, we get world-class people that are experts from all around the world in incorporating Bliss, and how, you know, they can share ways for you to incorporate Bliss into your life as well. So yeah, it's all really good, and all my stuff's available at blissfulmovement.com.
Perfect.
So we got retreats and you know, online courses. We've got like a beginner yoga class, 7-day challenge sort of thing that builds on the fundamentals, and then we also have like a more in-depth program as well that really goes deep into everything that you need to know about movement, mindfulness, and energy.
It's cool, man. It's a really good setup you've got, I must admit. Obviously, when you reached out to me, because I had to do a bit of digging in terms of what I was going to talk about, and things like that, I really enjoyed all your content, man. It was really fascinating. So I think the podcast is definitely an engaging way to go, and incorporating the video aspect, because you are a movement coach. It'd be quite cool to have, you know, if you've got guests on, to actually do some visual movements whilst doing a podcast. You know, it's something that's still very unique. I don't know too many people who are doing that, so that'd be a really good aspect and a good element to bring into your podcast. And how do you find the process of making it? Do you enjoy the podcast process?
Yeah, it's probably like the most meaningful project I've put together that I can remember. It's so transactional in the way that I actually gain and learn information at the same time as I'm able to share it with other people, and it's beautiful to just be that vessel for people.
I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree. And do you find that you can reach a new audience by promoting this podcast? Do you feel like it's an easier way to connect with people as well?
I find it's a deeper way to connect with people for sure. Yeah. It's tough to get your message out, especially when, you know, you've got so many messages you want to get out, and a podcast is such a effective way to do that. Yeah, absolutely. How often do you post a new episode? We do one every week, sometimes a few a week. Yeah, so 1 to 3 episodes per week is kind of what I aim to keep on track with. Okay. Is it like a specific time? Because some people are like a stickler for like Sunday at 7 o'clock, I want to check, see if his podcast has went live. Or is it just as and when you can do it? Or? I've done some research, and it seems like Wednesday and like midnight seems to be the best time of day. So I just stick to the program. Yeah. I'm like, all right, if I'm terrible with research and like with like ticking all the boxes. I'm like, what's the minimum I've got to do, you know? And so, yeah, luckily someone else has obviously done that research, and I just follow the steps. Yeah. That's good to know. I try and post mine on Sunday at 7 o'clock, so maybe I should change it to Wednesday midnight. And how do you feel with the whole edit and uploading process? Have you learned a lot through that as well? Because there are people that
watch and listen to this podcast just because they like the idea of maybe starting their own podcast. It's amazing the amount of people who have reached out asking for hints and tips on how to start their own. So there is some value in that as well. So how do you find the whole editing and the uploading process?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, the editing is like a lot of like re-listening to the same conversation over and over, but it's good because you're able to reflect and not just have something pass through you, but actually to kind of really embody it. So that's really nice.
That's a great point, because I feel like if you're at a dinner table or you meet up with a friend, you'll have an absolutely incredible conversation, and then you'll think, I wish someone recorded that. I would love to listen to that back. Yeah. So when you get a really good podcast episode and you listen to it back, you go, that was absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad that's a podcast episode. I cannot wait to upload that. So no, it's great for, like, as you say, reflection. It's great to listen to it back and hear some of the things, because sometimes things do pass you by in the moment because you're constantly moving on to the next subject. So no, I totally agree with that. And where do you host the audio for your podcast at interest? Because mine was on SoundCloud. You know how you've got to have somewhere where you upload it and then it goes to all the channels. But I then moved it to Anchor FM. And I find that quite a good platform so far in terms of a host. But where do you have yours?
I use Buzzsprout.
Right, yeah.
I think Transistor is another one that I was recommended, but Buzzsprout fills all my needs. And I mean, shout out to them.
Really? Do you have to pay for that platform? Or
I pay for it. It's like, I think $18 a month or something, and I get like 6 hours of content, which is perfect for me.
Well, I would suggest checking out Anchor FM because it's free. Is it? It's free. As far as I'm aware, there's no upload maximum limit. It's owned by Spotify.
Huh. Do you have outlets to every network?
You can push it to all the networks. Yeah. So you can push it to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and stuff like that.
Wow.
I find it a really good user interface. I find it's quite a useful platform. It's really easy, actually, in terms of putting in your descriptions, uploading the audio. The only issue I've had with Anchor FM is when I had done that 2-hour, 20-minute marathon episode, and my audio file size was like 280 megabytes or something like that. And so they've got a maximum upload of like 250 megabytes.
Right.
But it's very rarely you're going to get an audio file that size. But other than that, I find it a really good platform to use. Yeah. So it's maybe worth checking out. Save yourself $18 a month.
That's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm learning.
We've obviously touched on your online course. Do you want to talk a wee bit more about that again, just to plug that once more? Obviously, I know that's a part of your business.
I mean, it's a pretty full-on course. It includes, essentially everything that I know about movement, mindfulness, and energetics.
So it's a full extraction.
Yeah, and then it also includes like coaching calls with myself once per week, and for 3 weeks. I mean, you get the course for life, sort of thing. So if you don't get all the content, it's a lot all in that short period of time. You get to kind of look back on it, and the real beauty of it is like really starting to incorporate all the moves, as we call them.
So it's a visual online course then.
Yeah, so it's like modules and videos, but also coaching calls with myself, and then so we really start to embody all the things that you're actually learning. The ways that you walk, sit, stand, talk, and then the way that you think and the way that you feel as well.
Well, if this is free value you're giving out, I would love to know what you're giving out for paid value. I'd like to see behind the scenes on that one. So, and where was the website again?
Blissful Movement is where to find everything. Yeah,
you find it all there. Cool, good to know.
.com.
I had a wee look through the modules and stuff.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I had a look through. I was doing. Listen, I do my homework.
Good on you.
I give this, give a lot of value.
Yeah.
In terms of like face-to-face stuff. So if anyone's here in Bali, do you offer like one-on-one services and stuff as well?
Yeah, so I offer what's called Bliss sessions, and so it's typically an hour to an hour and a half, and we'll do mindfulness coaching, which is like a one-on-one talk therapy sort of thing, and then we also lie you down on the table and we do some breath work and body work, so incorporating the like physical and energetic sides as well. Yeah,
excellent, man. You're a busy man.
The whole package. Man. It's really keeps me busy for sure. There's
keeps you blissful and keeps you busy.
But I mean, at the same time, it's all work that I love, and that's another thing that seems to be like super transactional as well. It's like as I'm healing other people. Not that I'm healing them, they're healing themselves, but as they are
You're giving
healing
them
and
the tools
I'm
to
facilitating that, I'm also healing as well. So I find like, all healing is self-healing.
Absolutely.
As our friend Edward Dangerfield would
Mr. Dangerfield,
say.
yeah. And what's your grand vision? Where do you see this going, like in terms of your future? Have you got some grand plan?
Good question. I think eventually to be just doing retreats, and kind of specialize in all things movement, energy, and mindfulness. And then there's a couple other parts to self that are a lot deeper and a little bit more esoteric that aren't really worth getting into or explaining to people. Yeah. But there definitely are some even deeper parts to self, and those are your knowledge self and your bliss self as well. So I'd like to just be running retreats and kind of
here in Bali,
deep dives. I would imagine we'll have the yoga cafe as well. Right. Wherever that gets built is kind of where I'd base myself and kind of run a few retreats per year, is kind of the ideal plan. That's
and is that in the next few years?
Probably a few years out still. It's probably a 5-year kind of vision.
5-year plan.
Yeah, the 5-year plan.
The classic.
I've heard like it's not great to plan that far ahead because there's so many variables, and I find it to be true.
Absolutely.
It's like things change so quick that I typically stick to 3 months or less.
I'm the same
in my planning.
I think all you need to do is look at where you were a year ago. Could you have planned where you are now? That's because when I think about it, when I was a year ago, could I have planned or predicted where I was now? Not a chance.
No.
So how can you possibly make a 5-year plan?
I guess that's like the difference between like a goal and a vision.
Yeah,
it's like
true.
that can kind of be the vision.
Yeah.
As opposed to like goals, I think should always be within 3 months.
I totally agree. Absolutely. We're singing from the same hymn sheet there.
Yeah. I've got to wrap this up kind of soon because I've just got a bodywork session.
Okay. Yeah, we're nearly done, man. I'm just going to say, well, thank you for a fascinating insight into all of this, man. I've definitely learned a few things. I'm going home to smile at the sky, and I'm sure a lot of people back home will be flossing their tonsils and smiling at the sky as well. And hopefully they'll check out your Instagram as well as Blissful
_movements.
Yep.
Is the Instagram, and I post on there about all kinds of tips and tricks and techniques. Amazing. As well as a couple handstands and some of the tougher things as well. But for anyone who's interested in the neti pot as well, if anyone's got some tough sinuses or just feel like they're looking to breathe better, I'm looking to make a post on that really soon as well. And I'll give like a full explanation of kind of how to actually do it and how simple it is to live a very easy breathing blissful life.
Well, I'll be looking out for that one. Make sure you send that my way. I'm very intrigued to how that all works. So that's it, man. Is there anything else you want to add before I start wrapping this up with my own stuff?
I think there's oftentimes at the end of podcasts we love to send people to places, but I think the best place that I can send anyone is to themselves, and just to kind of look within and be with whatever it is that you're going through, whether it's joy or it's suffering. Like, just be so grateful and so in love with, Ram Dass talks about loving awareness, and that's kind of my mantra, is I am loving awareness, and whatever is happening is part of the human experience, part of the buffet of emotions that we have. So really just enjoy the ability to have that emotion.
Wow. That is how you end a podcast. That's how you end a podcast. I think that's going to be a tough one to beat. I appreciate that, man. Some very wise words there. Now, I would just like to thank my lonely patron Stephanie for her continued support, and also if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. But most importantly, I want to hear some comments about this man and what he's had to tell us today, because I'm very intrigued to hear what other people have thought about this, because this is a wee bit off the cuff from what we usually talk about. So I'm really interested to hear some feedback, so leave a comment, let us know. And that's all from me and Brady. Time to get back to your work, mate.
Legend. Thank you so much for having me, brother.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bringing in for the real thing.
So this has been a wee podcast for big subjects and personalities, sprinkled with a wee bit of Scottish humour. Cheers, my man.
Cheers, brother. You.